Hi, it's Sarah Elder, and welcome to the briefing note. This is just a quick message to let you know that this is a previously unreleased episode and was recorded while the podcast was still called Elected. But don't worry, this is still a briefing note. You're just getting a somewhat vintage episode. So enjoy. Welcome to Elected, a podcast for women in and around Canadian politics and our active accomplices. I'm your host, Sarah Elder. And today, joining me from all across the country in Ontario is Chantal Huinick, Who Inc. Oh my
Huinick.
gosh. Oh my gosh.
Huinick.
Hugh Inc.
Huinick.
For some reason, your name is giving me the most trouble I think I've ever had.
It's okay. At least it'll be memorable. Hi,
It
everyone.
is.
I'm glad to be here no matter how you pronounce my name. This is
Well,
exciting.
well, it is important that we get it right because I can tell you as sometimes I go by my hyphenated married name like Chaminara, and saying someone's name is very important. And I did ask you beforehand, but I still managed to really mess it up. So I'm really sorry.
It's a difficult one to pronounce. I understand. It's all good.
Okay, good. So we're going to be talking today about your journey into political life. And as a councillor for the region of Waterloo. But we had the opportunity to meet I guess, a couple of months ago now. It feels like it could have been
In
years.
June.
Yeah, in June. And
It feels
it's
like
already,
just yesterday, but it was a few months ago.
I know, it's crazy how time flies. And you were here for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities conference that was held here in Calgary. And we got to meet, and I loved you. I told you about this before, but meeting you was an absolute highlight of that experience for me. Because you weren't familiar with Madam Premier before, and you ended up coming in. I think some other people brought you, didn't they?
Yes. Yeah. I was there with a few of my colleagues from Waterloo Regional
Yeah.
Council. And I was very affirmed by your store. I've seen there is more and more support for women in politics, which is great. And I think that your organization has done a lot to put that front and center. But the thing that stuck out to me in your shop was the drawing of the women on Parliament Hill, including a woman who was wearing a hijab, a pregnant woman, and a woman using a wheelchair. And so I've seen a lot of support for women in general, but not so much for women in wheelchairs like myself. And
Yeah.
that was really, really impactful to me.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's framed and it hangs in my office. So,
well, and that's so meaningful to me because that's exactly because we talk about a lot about representation in politics, but I think the thing that gets left out of that conversation, first and foremost, is the accessibility part of it and the representation of people with invisible and visible disabilities.
right. And I'm very proud to be on Waterloo Regional Council this term. We've not only achieved gender parity, but we have individuals who are younger than me, individuals who are older than me, individuals with visible and invisible disabilities. So I think in terms of representing Canadian society as a whole, we're doing quite well. We could do more for religious and racial diversity, and I hope that is to come.
Oh, 100%. I think the work that you're doing in running and winning and so many others, the political landscape of who sits at tables across the country at every level is changing. It's maybe not as fast as we would all like, but it is happening.
The major campaign slogan that I used was an equal voice for all. And when I used that, I meant it in terms of young people and women and people with disabilities and so on and so forth. Um, but and what I also said was that it's I can't run physically, so I might as well run politically. And actually, the success of winning an election, it was not only an awesome and exciting career move for me because I love politics and I love influencing the public space and making sure that it's more accessible. But yeah, I lost my train of thought there. But yeah, it was really it was really affirming to me that my constituents not only see me as a, a person with disabilities, but they see me as a person with disabilities who is in fact a capable leader. And now I walk or roll the fine line between making sure that I represent my own experience and the experience of people with disabilities, similar or different from mine, but also that I'm not a one-issue politician, right? So that I have learned to become knowledgeable about things like water and wastewater and garbage pickup and all those gross things that no one wants to talk about, but everyone needs them. And maybe they don't have a significant bearing on experience with disability, but they're also important, right? And
Well,
so,
I definitely think that, in the same way that, some, traditionally politics has been so dominated by, men, white men, and coming from the areas of like law and finance, and the ways that people seem to naturally, even to this day, think that those kind of backgrounds lend themselves to being, the best voice at the table. It's just a shifting of perspective in the same way that, people with disabilities use and pay for taxes and city services, no matter where they are, and how they get delivered, and when they get delivered, and how they meet the needs of absolutely everyone is definitely a very valuable and absolutely necessary lens.
well, and unfortunately, Canada is not known for our supports of people with disabilities, right? The UN rapporteur on the rights of persons with disabilities came to Canada a few years ago and gave us a failing grade in the supports that we offer. And so from my perspective at this point, accessibility means the most at the local level, right? We need accessible housing, we need accessible transit, and so much more local services. But I think we need to be able to collaborate with and work with various levels of government. I think one of the things that a lot of people who haven't run for politics yet don't really know and maybe need to learn is that collaborating with different levels of government can be difficult in the sense that not necessarily because of the party lines, but because we're all responsible for different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what we do at the local level matters just as much as what we do at the provincial level and the federal level. And each of these levels has different influence on people's lives.
Well, and also there's no overriding jurisdiction responsible for accessibility, right? It's kind of like it's really left up for the most part, um, for people to make things accessible and to have that lens in designing services.
Right. And so I'm really proud. In Waterloo region, I not only represent the regional level of government as a person with a very visible disability, there's another city councillor with paralysis that sits on the Cambridge City Council, which is one of the cities in our region. And so we go to provincial conferences together and national conferences together, and we're two of the only people with disabilities currently involved in the political sphere in Canada. And we get noticed, but it's almost like there's something in the water. People in Waterloo region know that people are capable regardless of ability, and I'm really thankful for that and proud of that. It intrigues me, if not bothers me, that there's not currently a federal representative
Mm-hmm.
with a visible disability at this
Mm-hmm.
time. So
Yeah. I mean, I've had Carla Qualtrough, the federal minister, who has a vision, disability
awesome.
on the podcast. And we've talked about that. But that's more on the, not as a wheelchair user.
It's
I
less
will,
visible, but
yeah, it's
I
less
love
visible.
Carla Qualtrough. I think
Yeah.
she does really, really great work on
Yeah.
behalf of Canadians, and yeah.
Well, and I wanted, so the backstory to why, because you can't see it in your office because we talked about the print that I made, but I'm going to show it. So this one is actually of there. This one is of the province of BC, and then this woman in the wheelchair is actually my inspiration when I first worked as a political staffer in BC. There was an MLA at the time in BC named Stephanie Cadu, and she is a wheelchair user. And I think that was my meeting her and working with her, um, and was definitely, I mean, it opened my eyes, right, in terms of thinking about the participation of everyone, because again, I think that the accessibility issue gets forgotten when we think about things with like, what does DEI mean? Diversity includes accessibility. And then the other one that you have, this is actually the legislature in Saskatchewan, but it kind of could be anywhere because it's kind of like anonymous looking. But then the woman in the wheelchair is there, and they're different people. And Stephanie Cadu now is actually, when she stepped back out of politics, she's now serving as Canada's first chief accessibility officer.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I mean, it's unfortunate that it's taken so long for it. I think her appointment was in 2023. I could be wrong. Maybe it was 2022, right? But in terms of rapporteurs and ambassadors and different things for gender and for religions and for races, but it was that accessibility part that I think we're really still catching up on.
And I think that comes from, no matter what your experience is, no matter what angle of DEI you come from, you see the world from your own lens. And so
yes,
you see the obstacles that you face before the obstacles of anyone else. And so that's why I think representative politics is really, really important. I'm glad that I have one on council. I'm glad that there's not someone, another person with exactly my experience, right? I can represent my experience and those like me, and there needs to be other people on council representing various other concerns of marginalized communities. And I think that one of my main voices or emphases on council is to stand up for the most vulnerable, pun intended, because I don't stand up at all. But I knew what it was to grow up in a low-income environment. I knew what it was to need social services and supports, and I know what it is to face physical and structural and systemic obstacles. So I bring that to every conversation that I have.
That's so important, and so necessary. And I want to ask, so how did you get to the point where you were like, I want to run to be a councillor for the region of Waterloo? What was that journey like for you?
Yeah, well, my journey started when I was 12. My grandfather, who came over from the war in after the Second World War from Holland, who was a very proud Dutch Canadian, said, "You should go into politics. You would like it, and you would be good at it." And I thought, "Thank you so much, Opa." But like maybe someday, right? I didn't imagine myself there at 12, and I didn't imagine myself there at 39 either. I kind of thought, even though I love politics and I kept in touch with current events and had various opinions about various things, I kind of thought it would be a career after the fact. And so I trained in a multicultural interfaith seminary called Martin Luther University College. I got my master's in divinity from them, combined with my master's of social work. I wanted to not only face spiritual questions from a social lens, but not only face social problems with a spiritual lens, right? I wanted to be able to do both of those things. And in that training time, I was working for the local children's rehab center in town and loving it. And I became acquainted with Dorothy McCabe, who also worked as a representative of the Children's Rehab Center. And a couple of summers ago, she contacted me for a coffee and she said, I'm running for mayor of Waterloo. And I said, oh, that's so awesome. I love politics. Do you want me to help you with your campaign? And she said, I know you love politics. And like, yeah, sure, you can help in my campaign. But I was thinking you should run. And so it kind of, my angle changed overnight, right? I was very prepared to lose, right? I thought the chances of a woman less than 40, who has very visible disabilities and no technical work experience as a politician to speak of are pretty low. But I thought this would be fun and I'll see what happens. And if I get it, I'll work really, really hard. And so that's what I told the people of Waterloo. I said, I really want this job. And I said, if I get it, I'll work really, really hard for you. So like technically you can be a regional councillor part-time, but I devote all of my time to this role, and not only like learning about the staff reports and making sure that I'm knowledgeable before I vote, but also making sure that I'm visible to the community and I'm involved in fundraising and I'm doing different things for nonprofit organizations. And I don't know if I'm working as hard or accomplishing as much as a person without disabilities, but I'm working as hard as I can work. So, and the region has also set me up with an accessibility accommodation that involves an administrative assistant whose role it is to make sure that whatever accessibility gaps there are, be that in transit, be that in the notes that council gets, that she is able to bridge those kind of gaps for me. And so to anybody with significant visible disabilities who's thinking of running, I want to be clear that I won partly because of my passion for politics and my enthusiasm in this role, but I'm succeeding also because of the community support around me and the way that the region has responded to my election. An interesting note that I posted on my Instagram soon after I was elected. I was 10 when Tracy Latimer died, and I didn't know Tracy personally, but I knew that she had the same disability as I did, and it was quite impactful for me when she died. And I since then I've been really, really trying to show my community and the world that there are more reasons to live. And so I was really, really blessed that I was actually elected on the 29th anniversary of Tracy's death. Didn't plan that, didn't expect it, but it's significant to me.
Yeah, of course. Well, and I think that, I hope that this conversation and hearing your honestly very powerful words, moving even, like very moving and touching, reaches even just one person, and that they consider the potential of them, in that way. Because I think that the lack of representation acts as kind of an invisible or visible deterrent, right? Because you have to, in the same vein of like, you have to see it to be it, right? We don't see it. So there are too many people who are thinking, I can't be it, right? But
I wouldn't have thought I could be it right here, right now, if it wasn't for my former colleague who had confidence in me.
Dorothy,
said,
yeah.
I'm running, you could run too, we could run together. Let's see and she's the mayor of Waterloo, and I get to, sit a couple of seats down from her on council. But one of the most impactful experiences that I had in the process of running, I came to regional headquarters to sign the papers and make it all official. And I was starting a campaign and so on. And Dorothy said, "Can we just visit council chambers for a second?" And the clerk that was working that day, God bless her, let us in. And I looked and I saw that there was a ramp fully around the council chambers. And I thought, I could do that. I could be here. I could do this. I could sit here and I could be in this role. Had that been like really complicated and, stairs and steps and things, I wouldn't have had that confidence, I think. So it's multiple factors, right? The confidence of a friend and respected colleague, the physical environment being accessible, the stars aligning, the influence of my grandfather, and I'm here, I'm glad to be here, and I hope that I'm elected again. I want to be here for a while, but I don't want to be the only one, and I don't think that I should be. And I think that in our society today, we overvalue independence, right? So if I thought, well, I can't do that because, I can't make sure that every document is accessible, and I can't book all the transportation and show up to all the places myself. That's all true, right? I need support for that. But that's why there is an accessibility assistant by my side for a lot of the things. So I think that people with and without disabilities could accomplish so much more and live their dreams if they weren't so afraid to collaborate.
100%. Well, and I think the point, you telling that story about Dorothy is just, incredible because I hadn't heard that before. But I think the idea of us, taking each other's hands, right, and pulling each other along, into spaces, in places, to tables, to rooms that, maybe we didn't imagine seeing ourselves in, right? Because the journey, there's this real idea of like scarcity, right? Like there's not enough room for everybody. Well, why not? That's true in elections. Some people win and some people lose, but like we're stronger together. We're stronger together.
Maybe we need to figure out some way, some policy that we're not electing 90% of the same people. We're electing people with specific and diverse experiences.
Yeah. Well, I think personally, I think the more, with time, unfortunately, it's not going as fast as I would like it to, but, I think oh, really?
I just celebrated my 41st birthday.
Oh, we're the same age. I'm 41 too.
Congratulations. That's
Thanks.
awesome.
You too.
Yes, good. So I would like time to slow down, but I hear you. The political wheels and the changes in society don't move as fast as we would like them to.
Yeah, you're right. I am totally on board with slowing down our personal aging. But the acceleration of political time to get to the point where, the change that we want to see happens.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. But I think we're both doing okay in terms of aging. But I wanted to talk to you too about, and you made the point of wanting to talk about that very important button behind you on the door.
Oh, yes. The access button. So I think in my little experience of going to council chambers, that was really, really influential to me because it showed that, maybe someone with wheels hadn't entered chambers yet, didn't have a desk in chambers yet, but the council was ready, or the community was ready. That being said, though, there were all kinds of secure spaces. My office is secure, and we have a few secure meeting rooms for confidential matters that weren't made automatic doors and so on and so forth for security purposes of making sure that the automatic doors were also safe and whatnot. But I think this general idea of not anticipating that people with disabilities will be in every space is a
Mm,
problem for architects and designers in society. Um, but I also mentioned the responsiveness of the region of Waterloo. Um, I literally, the day after I was elected to regional council, I was having conversations with our excellent CAO, and um, they were promising to move so fast to get things fully accessible, like my automatic door on my office and other things as well. And so it was kind of funny. I was kind of the slower one. I was kind of like, it's okay. I'm surprised too. We can work on this together. And if it takes a couple of weeks, it's okay. But that being said, whether or not I'm elected in the next election, like everything that a councillor with a disability would use is now fully accessible to them. So that not only benefits me, but benefits anyone who wants to run in the future. And I won't say fully accessible for everyone, because everyone has different access needs, right?
mhm.
And it'll depend on the person so somewhat, but just to know how quickly things were altered and responded to and changed and fixed and made better. And I love that.
Yeah,
Um,
that's amazing. Well, and I also think I think, your experience serves as a template in some ways, because for someone who comes after you, maybe in a different municipality or, in a
yeah,
different level of
comes
government, and
comes
who
into
doesn't
reading
have
what I'm
that same level of support, right? Who has people who are like, yeah, when we get around to it, right? Like, and they can be like, no, actually, I know of a counselor in the region of Waterloo, and they were able to make these accommodations and they did it in this timeline. So
yeah.
the expectation is that you do the same thing.
And and Sarah, you just used the word accommodations, and I just want to touch on that. I
Mm,
know that's a common word that we use, and that's the word that's in vogue. But I think that so many people think of with disabilities think of themselves as a burden or someone that needs to be accommodated. And
mm,
if there's one thing that this job with a little bit more influence has shown me, is that I'm no longer just accommodated, right? I'm responded to, and people are really excited when I show up. I used to go to random community events and people would be like, "Oh crap, our space is inaccessible. Sorry, like better luck next time," kind of a thing. And now
mm.
when I show up as Councillor Huinick for the region of Waterloo, people are like, "We're so glad you came. What can we do to make it accessible?" Right? And so it's weird that I get special treatment like that. But I would be lying if I said I didn't enjoy it. And I think ultimately, like, my influence is that, now that you've made it accessible for me, you can
Mm.
make it accessible for everyone.
Yeah.
There will come a day when I'm no longer so important, but I still need to be in every space.
Well, here maybe someone, even when the day, if and when the day comes when you are a former counselor, then that comes with, like, the deference of being a former counselor, right?
Well, and that comes with the pride of knowing that someone who can represent similar concerns is ready and can do it better than I did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wish I could say that, everyone who gets elected um has the qualifications and the enthusiasm for the job that you do, but that's honestly not, like, the best person doesn't always win, right? I've come, there's the expression that, the voters are never wrong. I disagree with that based on some people in the world who, one of whom is running for something right now in the United States. But um, you know, uh, I think in terms of, the button that you now have in your office, right? Um, and, this conversation and your visibility and your presence at council, and, it's so important. And I also think like for anyone who is in school maybe and is in a wheelchair or, is,
Has
um,
limitations of some kind.
exactly. And, sees you and, you're a counselor, right? And they think,
It's still a little bit shocking to me, to be honest, right? When I hear my name on the radio and it's Councillor Huinick. And quite honestly, I told you at the beginning of the podcast that
yeah.
I speak up for the most vulnerable, and I understand like social systems and social priorities and stuff. And so that's where my lean is. But people who know of my passion and who know of my qualifications and who voted for me because of them have emailed me or spoken to me and wondered if my values have changed, right?
Mm,
Because certain votes don't go certain ways, right? I'm one person on a council of 16, and
yeah.
sometimes those other 15 people agree with me, and many times they don't, right? And but I think what we have to remember as people who are not in the political sphere is that there's so much more than meets the eye to the political
Mm,
journey, and there's so many more competing interests than we realize, right? I would love to make the best decision for the people with disabilities all the time, and I hope that I work toward that. But like, if it's a question between myself or someone else who is also struggling, and we talked a little bit before about scarcity, I'm with you. It's not scarcity, but there are limits to how much we can do in certain timeframes. And
yeah.
so I've really had to balance my own experience with the needs of other people, which is not always super fun, but super
Yeah.
important.
I would agree. I would agree. Well, and I think that's the difference between the idea of something and the reality of it, right?
Yes.
Is like, you know, I have ideas, for example, about, the funding of education here in my own province of Alberta and how it should be better, right? The reality is that A, I'm not in a position where I can make those decisions. So it's just simply my opinion. And B, if I was in that position, the reality of implementing, what I would want would quickly run up against, you know, a budget, right? And competing interests.
Yeah.
And other people being like, no, you can't, like, I know there's like, that's just simply not, that's too much or whatever it may be. Right. So it's like I think a lot of the times is, for people who are new to the political process, it's like, I'm going to commit to doing this for you. But then once you're on the other side, it's how can I actually do that?
You're like,
Right.
oh,
Because you're
crap.
one vote to your point.
Well, and there's all these other factors that I
Yeah.
didn't know about, right?
Mm, yeah.
But I think to your point about, I can't implement it because I'm not an elected official, possibly true. But you can, and everyone else listening to us,
Yeah.
thank you for listening if you're still listening. That you can influence your political officials,
Oh,
right?
100%. A hundred
And
percent.
can I just let you in on a little secret? Like, form letters are not the answer. Signing your name to a letter that a
Mm,
thousand other people have signed doesn't matter. I don't reread them a thousand times. I read the first two, and that's that. But call me, ask me for coffee, tell me your
mm.
story, and it's a lot different, right? So
Well, that's very, 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 very valuable advice because I think, in the world of social media and in the world of political parties and political candidates, it's not, it's more about the collection of information, right? Of names, emails, and phone numbers and addresses versus, and then, yeah, we'll send in this letter because on issue X. But to your point, like that is absolutely the best way to actually influence policy is by going a step further.
I also appreciate that municipal politics and regional politics are nonpartisan in the
Mm,
sense of like at the provincial level and the federal level, you join a party and you represent their values.
yeah.
I get to represent me, which in some ways is really great because when it goes well, it's because I listened to the people and I voted the way they wanted, and that was really great. But in other ways, if it doesn't go that way, it's on me, right? But at least I get to represent my own values and those of my constituents. And I don't have to toe a party line or do what other people tell me to do, because I'm not so good at that.
Well, on that note, have you ever considered running for like provincial or federal politics?
We'll see.
Okay.
I do want to at some point increase the level of representation um, of people with disabilities at the provincial and federal levels. But I realize that if I do that before someone else comes here, then I'm leaving a gap, right?
Mm.
And so I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what
Okay.
happens.
Well, I think that's something to watch for. And I'm happy to hear that you're open to it because um to your point, there's no one with a very visible physical disability in federal politics presently.
The successes that I've had are because I'm open to things. When doors open, I roll through them. And there's people that ask like, can I do that? And my question to the world or to the political sphere, to whoever I'm talking to, is not, can I do that? Is that possible? It's, how is that possible? How am I going to do that?
Mm. Well, and I think that's such an important point because I think people don't understand the difference between equality and equity, right?
Yeah.
And the equity piece is that it's actually not that everything looks the same for everyone. It's that different people have different needs in getting to the same point.
I'm the only councillor with an accessibility administrative assistant at the region, but I'm also the only councillor who needs that, right? I have
Mm,
my fine motor skills are less, my vision is minimal, and that's something that people don't know really about me. The first time we meet, I often like people think that I forget them because I'm a politician and I meet a lot of people. It's not because of that. It's because I never recognized them in the first place because I
mm.
don't see very well. And so, yeah, if everyone on council needed an accessibility assistant, they would get one. But because of equity, what you're just talking about, right now, I'm the only one that needs one. That will change over time, I bet.
Oh, 100%. I definitely
I
like
hope.
it. I hope so too. And I think that, you know, I mean, speaking as two 41-year-old women, right? And knowing that there's like a younger generation who are, inclusivity and accessibility and diversity, equity, and inclusion are more a part of the world that they are growing up in, at least compared to the world that I grew up in, where we didn't have those conversations and those words weren't a part of my vocabulary or the vocabulary of any environment that I was in. I think I know that things are going to be different and I know that things are going to change. Again, it's just not, you know, it's not maybe not happening as fast as we'd want.
And I ran into this idea, this perception on the campaign trail, partly because I couldn't knock on people's doors, so I would call them over to me. Right? I would say, I'm gonna be at such and such a coffee shop. Come
Mm.
talk to me, tell me what you need, tell me what you want, tell me what I need to do for you. But I ran into this perception that, well, you're in a wheelchair, so you don't have the energy or the stamina to do the job. Actually, I think in some ways I have more stamina because for one thing, there's coffee, which I love dearly. And for another, I don't waste energy walking, right? And so I hope that through my Instagram account and my involvement in the community, I'm changing this perception that people with disabilities don't have energy. It's true that some of us struggle with fatigue, but it's not true for everyone. And you can still put energy towards the things that you value or the things that you work hard about.
Well, and I think the questions, I mean, and because, this young women get asked, how old are you? Right. Or, like, are you a mom or are you a parent or like all of these different, you know, things that, the gendered aspect of politics. Right. And I'm not actually, what would be the word? what would be the word? So that instead of gendered, but apply it to accessibility issues. Like
Ableism.
yeah, okay, yeah. Able, of
Yeah.
course. Ableism. So, the gendered aspect of it, the ableist aspect of thank you for
Yeah.
reminding me
No problem.
of these things. But and then I also think like the pushing back on it, right? So answering people's questions, but then also I think challenging them on, like, have you considered why you're asking me this? And have you ever asked someone who, isn't a woman or who isn't in a wheelchair a similar kind of question?
Right. And for me, I hear what you're saying. We get made to answer things that most people don't get answered.
Yeah.
Have to answer. But for me, I mean, I was born 2 months premature with legs that don't work and eyes that were subpar, right? And so I had a 50% chance of survival in an incubator for 2 months. So the fact that I'm, 41 and still kicking and still breathing and still like that's really exciting to me, and I will enjoy every day that I get, and I'm not planning to die or slow down anytime soon. My chair carries me 12 kilometers an hour, which is too fast for everyone else to walk. But yeah, I guess I'm like most women. If you ask me how old I am, I'll tell you exactly that age and exactly how much I've accomplished and that I want to accomplish that much more.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I would you can go faster in your wheelchair right now than I can run. I definitely couldn't
Yeah,
run 12 kilometers in an hour in this.
my dog loves it. So
Oh,
yeah,
what kind of dog do you have?
I have a chocolate lab German Shepherd.
Oh, interesting
Yeah.
mix. And what
She's
is their name?
beautiful. She's beautiful. Her name is Mocha. And that's because I love coffee. So,
That's a true testament to your love of coffee then. I did not. I have a dog too. I did not name. I also love coffee. Her name is Lola, but
oh,
yeah, actually a funny story is you love coffee and you named your dog Mocha. Before my husband and I had children, I was like, oh, if we ever had a daughter, I really love the name Lola, and his first language is Farsi.
okay.
And in
Now
Farsi,
you make your dog Lola.
I did, but
Oh, that's funny.
because in Farsi, Lola means door hinge.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so naming a child door hinge, right, would be maybe
Oh, but naming a dog
naming a dog exactly. We
is
ended up,
is
yeah.
Lola skilled enough to open a door?
Um, she uses her nose and her
Okay.
paws a little
Okay.
bit,
So
but she's more on the like she has to be motivated to do that.
okay.
Yeah.
My dog is motivated to eat anything and everything.
Lola is only treat motivated, not unless or if you're like, Lola, I have a piece of pizza for you.
She's probably better behaved than my dog, but
No, I doubt it. I would, I, I, I don't think so, but I think Mocha is probably a very good girl. Um, well, I don't know when our paths will cross again, but I really hope they do.
I like Calgary. It's a very accessible city.
Oh,
And
good to know.
yeah, and so I would be glad to come back there and speak or
Yeah.
to just visit and hang out and yeah.
Well, and I think to anyone who's listening who has a role in any maybe a national or provincial or regional organizations dedicated to increasing the participation of women in Canadian politics, this is
Um,
really a call to focus on the accessibility piece,
yes,
right?
thank you very
Yeah.
much. Yeah,
So I'm going to keep watching your political journey, and I really wish you all the best.
thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks.
Great to chat today.